Hello and welcome guys to a new video. So today we're gonna be reacting to the Napoleonic War part 3. It's about the Battle of Friedland. So yeah, just to inform you guys, I have rewatched the first and second parts, which is Austerlitz and Jena Auerstadt, especially the parts of Davout when he was overwhelmed by the Prussians and still managed to attack and destroy them. Yeah, I'm really enjoying this series, and I will not stop until the last episode of it. And yeah, some of you have told me that there are some before the Napoleonic Wars, some which are the wars of Napoleon himself when he was a general. So yeah, I will get to that later. I believe I'm now concentrating on the Napoleonic War series, so I don't want to get distracted, or because it's not distraction, but because I love the series and I love the details and I love knowing everything about each episode. I will be like confused in some parts. So I will finish this series of Napoleonic Wars. Then I will get back and watch the before the Napoleonic Wars. So yeah, let's get started and make sure you check out the original content. And yeah.
One week before Christmas 1806, French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte arrived in the Polish city of Warsaw, then part of Prussia. A year had passed since his great victory over the Austrians and Russians at Austerlitz, and 2 months since he'd hammered the Prussians at Jena. But Russia still had powerful forces in the field, the most important of which was the Russian First Army, commanded by General Bennigsen.
So Napoleon didn't finish off the Russians at Austerlitz. He fought only a smaller version of the Russian army. So now the main army is under General Bennigsen, I believe.
Would not be master of Europe until it was defeated, and Russia and Prussia forced to make peace. But that winter, Napoleon's first attempt to trap Bennigsen near Pultusk got bogged down in thick Polish mud. The Russians withdrew to Białystok. The French army, half-starved and frozen, was ordered into winter quarters. While in Warsaw, Napoleon began a famous affair with a young Polish noblewoman, Marie Walewska. In the late 18th century, the once mighty Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had been swallowed up by its neighbours, Russia, Austria, and Prussia, in a series of annexations known as partitions. Until in 1795, a third and final partition wiped Poland off the map.
Why? Why would they do that? Do they hate Poland that much? So,
Austria Commonwealth had been
this is the original Poland in which year?
Swallowed up by its neighbours, Russia, Austria.
Okay, in 1772. Yeah, this is good to know. I've never knew that Poland was that big.
Prussia, in a series of annexations known as partitions. Until in 1795, a third and final partition wiped Poland off the map. Now, Polish patriots looked to Napoleon as their saviour, praying that his victories against their occupiers would lead to the rebirth of a Polish state. Marie Walewska became Napoleon's mistress in order to further this cause. Ordinary French soldiers, however, had little love for Poland. It was impoverished, freezing, and they missed home. Desertion rates soared. There were even 100 cases of suicide. Marshal Ney, commanding 6th Corps, sent patrols towards Heilsberg, looking for better quarters. What they found were Russian and Prussian soldiers on the move. They'd stumbled into a surprise winter attack by Bennigsen. Napoleon quickly laid a trap for the Russian army, ordering Ney and Bernadotte to retreat and lure Bennigsen west, while he led the rest of the army north to fall on his flank and rear. But the Russians captured a French courier carrying the Emperor's orders to Marshal Bernadotte. Bennigsen, now warned of the trap, ordered a retreat, fighting a series of rearguard skirmishes against the pursuing French. But he refused to give up the city of Königsberg without a fight, and turned to give battle at Eylau. The Battle of Eylau, fought over 2 days, was one of the most brutal of the Napoleonic Wars, fought in freezing conditions, with neither side backing down. Marshal Augereau's 7th Corps, advancing into the face of a snowstorm, lost its way and was cut to pieces by Russian cannon fire. 5 French Eagles were lost. Napoleon's army was only saved by a devastating massed cavalry charge by 10,000 horsemen, led by the fearless Marshal Murat, and remembered as one of the great cavalry charges in history. At Eylau, for the first time as emperor, Napoleon failed to win a clear victory on the battlefield.
Because the freezing conditions, it doesn't play by your rules. Even if you are a good tactician, the weather is very important to consider. So, especially the Russians knew more the field or the terrain.
He and the Russians covered up the true scale of their losses, but both...
Even though the French had lesser casualties than the Russians, but the wounded are more. 15,000 wounded.
Both sides are estimated to have lost 1/3 of their armies in the carnage. After the horrors of Eylau, both armies sought time to rest and recover. Meanwhile, the newly formed French 10th Corps under Marshal Lefebvre besieged Danzig, held by 13,000 Prussians under General Kalkruth. The city came under heavy French bombardment and infantry assault. After 8 weeks, with no prospect of reinforcement, the Prussian garrison surrendered on the 27th of May. Napoleon's northern sea flank was now secure against any possible Russian landing. The French Emperor now commanded an army 190,000 strong, against just 115,000 Russian and Prussian troops. But it was Bennigsen who moved first, launching a surprise attack against Ney's 6th.
This guy Bennigsen is playing only on surprise attacks.
Corps on the 5th
Hoping
of June.
to...
Ney conducted a brilliant fighting withdrawal and escaped. Bennigsen, having lost the element of surprise, and with Napoleon advancing, retreated once more. 4 days later at Heilsberg, the French lost 10,000 men in a botched assault against Russian defences. But the Russians continued their retreat the next day. Napoleon thought Bennigsen would head north to Königsberg, but instead he retreated northeast, keeping to the east bank of the Eylau River. So when Napoleon's army marched north, it was Marshal Lannes' reserve corps on his right flank that next encountered the Russian army, near the small town of Friedland. In the late afternoon of the 13th of June, Russian cavalry scouts informed General Bennigsen that they'd found a single French corps at Friedland. Bennigsen decided he had time to cross the Eylau River and smash this isolated corps before the rest of the French army could arrive to save it. And he ordered his army to begin crossing the river.
I have a question about this. He thinks he's gonna cross the river and the French are gonna wait for him, not to escape when they see a larger army. This is obvious. How would you say that you would catch them? How is it possible to catch an enemy in a position where they are far and they know that you must take time to reach them? I don't understand this.
Marshal Lannes, commanding 16,000 men and facing 46,000 Russians, sent an urgent message to Napoleon that he was under attack from the main Russian army. Then he fought a skillful delaying action, hiding the weakness of his force behind a large screen of skirmishers, while gradually yielding.
Okay, so this guy must be a good tactician, Lannes. Basically, what I know about skirmishers. Skirmishers aren't like the regular soldiers in this era. Skirmishers they have sometimes, I believe, rifles, and they fight, like they take cover, they fire at will, etc. It's basically skirmishing. The term skirmishing, that means that to disrupt or interrupt the enemy.
Holding ground to the enemy.
But I can see that the enemy had cavalry, and skirmishers are extremely weak against cavalry. And I don't know how he did it, how he managed to hold his skirmishers and hold his ground. Because I can see the icons on that the Bagration advance guard had some horses there. But is he the one who didn't send them forward, or the skirmishers were too good, or the field was unsuited for horses? I have many questions here.
Lannes was still...
I'm sorry guys, but I really focus on the details. I have so many questions, I don't want to keep pausing it every time. So, yeah. I'm sorry for
holding off the Russians as darkness fell. That night, Russian engineers built 3 pontoon bridges at Friedland.
Because I play Age of Empires, you may know. Age of Empires, you play like in a similar age of the Napoleon, a bit earlier than the Napoleonic Wars, but yeah, basically the same tactic, the same style.
Speed the movement of troops over the river. But Bennigsen was taking a huge risk. If this turned into a major battle...
Why would he even build bridges? If the first attack didn't succeed, why would you build bridges and put yourself? I can see here it's already a disastrous position. Is he if he gonna advance? Yeah, it's understandable. But if he stood his ground here, he's doomed.
His army would have to fight with its back to the river.
Yeah.
And the steep banks of the Mill Stream dividing its left wing from its right.
Oh, this is even worse. This is even worse. This is disastrous. And the French are already arriving to strengthen their... to keep them at bay. Well, I believe the rest of the army would arrive.
Bennigsen had also badly underestimated the speed at which Napoleon's Grande Armée would react. The first French reinforcements arrived that night.
Wow.
The Emperor himself wasn't far behind.
The couriers must have a lightning speed. They may be cheating, like they don't have regular horses. This is yeah. You know, to make your communications reliable in a foreign country, it's extremely difficult. It takes some extremely logistical details and work to do it. We won't catch the enemy making a mistake like this twice. Yeah, he's talking basically about the positioning of the Russians. It's obvious.
By dawn on the 14th of June, about 40,000 Russians had crossed to the west bank of the Eylau River. Bennigsen ordered an attack on the village of Heinrichsdorf to turn the French left flank. But French cavalry reinforcements, led by General Grouchy, intercepted the Russians. In more than an hour of charge and countercharge, the French horsemen finally drove the Russians back. Marshal Mortier's 8th Corps now arrived to reinforce the French centre. In Sortlac Wood, General Oudinot's elite Grenadier Division fought stubbornly against Prince Bagration's left wing, but was outnumbered by the Russians and gradually pushed back. Around noon on a sweltering day, Napoleon himself arrived. He was soon followed by 1st Corps, commanded by General Victor, standing in for the wounded Marshal Bernadotte, as well as Ney's 6th Corps and the Imperial Guard under Marshal Bessières. The date, the 14th of June, held special significance for Napoleon. It was the 7th anniversary of his great victory over the Austrians at Marengo. A good omen, he declared. The battle then entered a lull, as Napoleon assessed the situation, saw Bennigsen's dangerous position, and issued orders for an attack to take advantage of it. Bennigsen, meanwhile, who was tormented by ill health throughout the day, saw that he now
You can see, guys, this picture here. I've learned something about some facts about Napoleon. He wasn't that short. I think he was average height. And the reason why he seemed or looked short, because he was always pictured or drawn with the Imperial Guard. The Imperial Guard are the tallest, strongest of the soldiers. So yeah, to them he looks shorter. But for the average perspective of this time, he was average height.
To take advantage of it. Bennigsen, meanwhile, who was tormented by ill health throughout the day, saw that he now faced the full might of Napoleon's army and issued orders for a retreat.
This is the objective: advance, looking neither right nor left. Bore into the thick mass, cost what it may. Tournay. So.
But before Bennigsen's retreat could get underway, at 5:30 p.m, 3 salvos from the French guns signalled the start of Napoleon's attack. It was led by Ney's 6th Corps on the right wing, who first cleared Bagration's infantry from Sortlack Wood. But as Ney's troops left the cover of the trees, they came under heavy fire from Russian cannon across the river. As the French attack faltered, Prince Bagration rallied his men and launched a cavalry counterattack. Ney's corps retreated. But now General Victor's 1st Corps came up on his left. Its artillery commander, General Senarmont, advanced with 30 guns and blasted the Russians at point-blank range with case shot.
Holy shit, case shot. It's basically shooting people at close range with shotguns. This is what it is. Holy.
The Russian General Senarmont advanced with 30 guns and blasted the Russians at point-blank range with case shot. Hundreds of Russians were mown down within minutes. Under this onslaught, Bagration's men began to waver and then retreat.
Of course they would retreat.
Around 7 p.m, the Russian Imperial Guard launched a desperate counterattack to try to halt the French advance on Friedland. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. As exploding shells began to start fires in Friedland, the French centre and left wing joined the attack. With its only escape route under threat,
he didn't mention Davout in this battle. Where is Davout? Was he like given another mission?
The entire Russian army began a panicked retreat towards the river.
Because from that point when Davout fought the Prussians, I just want to see what he would do next.
But Friedland's houses and bridges were now ablaze. The town became a deadly trap for the Russians. Many were drowned trying to cross the river, others killed or captured. North of Friedland, some units were able to escape across a ford or along the river bank. But there was no disguising the Russians' terrible defeat. The Battle of Friedland was one of the most decisive victories of Napoleon's career. At the cost of 10,000 casualties, he had inflicted twice as many losses on the Russians, about 20,000 men, killed, wounded or taken prisoner, 40% of Bennigsen's army. The Prussians abandoned Königsberg the next day, which was occupied by Soult's 4th Corps, while Bennigsen's shattered army retreated across the river Niemen into Russia. Tsar Alexander's advisors implored him to make peace with Napoleon. He accepted their advice, and a ceasefire was agreed. Alexander and Napoleon met for the first time aboard a raft in the middle of the river Niemen, near Tilsit, and developed an immediate rapport. Tilsit proved to be one of history's great diplomatic summits, as the two emperors feted each other for days, with banquets, parades and concerts, then discussed affairs late into the night. A friendship of sorts developed, while Russia's former ally, King Frederick William of Prussia, was left out in the cold.
Oh. So basically the Russians had abandoned their ally. Like,
And it was Prussia who would lose most in the Treaties of Tilsit, signed 2 weeks later. 1/3 of Prussian territory was taken away to create the new Kingdom of Westphalia, to be ruled by Napoleon's 22-year-old brother Jerome, and the Duchy of Warsaw, to be ruled by the King of Saxony, which Polish patriots hoped would prove a stepping stone on the road to their own state. Polish troops were recruited into the Grande Armée, with Polish lancers even forming part of Napoleon's elite Imperial Guard.
oh, so they are
Russia only had to give up the
very good.
Ionian Islands, as Alexander accepted an alliance with Napoleon that left the French Emperor master of Europe. Alexander even agreed to join the continental system, Napoleon's economic blockade of Great Britain, which banned British ships and goods from all French-controlled ports. The system had been established the previous winter by Napoleon's Berlin Decree. Napoleon hoped that by cutting off British trade with Europe, he'd cause financial chaos and political upheaval in Britain, allowing him to make a favourable peace. There was just one problem: the continental system.
So, yeah, I believe the British Empire had a much larger resources, so they would survive this continental system. I believe the other European depends on Britain's shipping, so this is also gonna affect the Europeans as well.
Didn't
France.
work.
Yeah, it didn't work.
Not only was it impossible to enforce and undermined by widespread smuggling, the system damaged French trade just as much as British trade. The decisive weapon in this economic war would prove to be the British Royal Navy, which that summer ensured its continued naval dominance by launching a preemptive strike against the neutral Danish fleet at Copenhagen, capturing their warships before they could fall into Napoleon's hands.
Smart.
Royal Navy squadrons blockaded all major French ports, seizing any ships trading with France, while ensuring British merchants could continue to trade overseas in relative safety. The Navy even seized the tiny Danish island of Heligoland as a base for smuggling British goods into Europe. But most disastrously for Napoleon, the continental system would draw him into two conflicts that proved ruinous for his empire. The first would be fought in the Iberian Peninsula, where Napoleon decided to force Britain's ally, Portugal, to join the continental system. In November 1807, French troops, supported by their Spanish ally, invaded the country. The Portuguese royal family fled to their colony of Brazil, as the French occupied Lisbon without a fight.
Easy.
It looked as though Napoleon had won yet another easy victory. But the Peninsular War was just beginning.
Okay.
Thanks to our sponsor.
So we'll see some Spain, I believe. Spain and Portugal. So yeah, I'm excited to see that. This is very, very, very educative channel. I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying the narration, the narrator voice, and the script, everything, the animation. So very thankful, and yeah, I will see you guys on the next episode. See you soon.